Well, I think we had a bad start, first 10 minutes. I don't think we were in the right spot mentally. We came in with too much stress and pressure. It's the first time that I noticed this year. Players are human, and we have to understand that this can happen. And I think the goal is a mistake that we did. We shouldn't consider a goal like this. I think after, as is happening all the season, the resilience that this team has, and how they respond, right? How they respond to adversity, and I think this season you can say that is a season that things are not going in our way. We're not having luck in some moments, and then we overcome that adversity, control the game really well at the beginning with possession, not much arriving to the final third, but giving steps and progressing. Then we started doing some good combinations, and arrived and we had some crosses there, some set pieces, and the only thing it was our positioning in the last area wasn't really good. We had too many players trying to come towards the ball instead to be in pockets and to be higher on the pitch. At halftime, we addressed that. We showed some clips to them to see that. We correct that positioning, and it worked. In the second half, we were doing attack and under attack and under attack, and we had clear chances.
We'll leave it there with Nico. But welcome everybody to Afterburn Soccer Show. That was FC Dallas head coach Nico Estevez speaking to media after the 1-1 draw, the home draw against San Jose Earthquakes, who are also in the hunt to lock down a playoff spot, and headed by former FC Dallas manager Luchi Gonzalez. So we're excited to have you all tonight. We're going to be taking your questions, your comments as we break down Saturday evening's draw at home for FC Dallas as they welcome San Jose, but could only manage a 1-1 draw coming back from 1-0 down to get the equalizing goal from Hyder Obrian. An interesting result because, let's get to that first. First, let's introduce everybody. Of course, with us as usual is our buddy Jose Carmona at El Chico Carmona on Twitter.
What's up, everybody?
Or X. And welcoming back Ishmael Belcora, fresh off of work, fresh off of shaving, or maybe he needs to shave again soon. I don't know. At Belcora Isma on Twitter. Right now we have 2 games left for FC Dallas. This is it. This is do or die moment. So every match matters. A point certainly is not the end of the world. 0 points would have been worse, but FC Dallas right now is on the cliff's edge of getting into that playoff spot, and yet couldn't get it done on Saturday. So let's talk about that game. This is a game where it seems like the team really didn't play terribly, and yet couldn't find that go-ahead goal. And as Nico pointed out in his opening comment, started off poorly. Jose, what were your reactions to this match?
Started off poorly is an understatement. They started out in a complete disaster. I mean, we all know Lucci. We know his teams tend to struggle on the road, and you gift wrap them a goal inside of the first 3 minutes. That's right there. You knew we were going to be playing for a draw the rest of the way because, sure, FC Dallas might be able to get a goal, but you knew that Lucci was just going to bunker and sit back. And I mean, FC Dallas, who likes to give up possession, ended up out-possessing San Jose, a sure sign that things were not going well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not happy about it at all. You needed 3 points here. It's a 6-point game. 3 points fixes a lot of issues for this team at home. It's frustrating, I think, for everybody that this team is now basically still fighting to just, take the 9th or 8th spot. I mean, a win here, and we're talking, we're thinking we're not worried about that. But here we are playing Colorado, and if Colorado wasn't a must-win match before it is now, I mean, you can't possibly play that match and walk out of there with a point. That would just be disastrous.
Ishmael, your thoughts about Saturday's match?
I mean, it was kind of like the quintessential performance that like represents the season. Uh, the fact that we have one loss in 10, and that's not a good thing, is again kind of wild. Um, like it's just disappointing that once the first goal was scored, it could like you could tell like as a Dallas fan this season that getting a win was going to be tough. Like that you knew that coming back from that kind of position, even though it's a Lucci team, even though you're at home, like just being able to score was going to be difficult. There was a wild stat that was said in the middle of the Apple TV broadcast that we haven't won a single game. Like the only games that we've won are games that Jesus has scored in.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane.
I saw that
That
too.
is that is such a troubling like reality like description of this season. The fact that we're describing this Colorado game again, I know this is not the San Jose game, but the fact that we're describing this Colorado game as a must-win, and that we're not confident in this win, is again epitomizes this whole season. On the performance, what's wild about this game is that the majority of the players had a really good performance. Like this might be ER Mendy's best performance this year, and that's like saying a lot because he's been really good this year. Paxton did really well. Obrian is playing for that contract legitimately. Like he's done he's had such good performances over the last 5 or 6 games. My boy Ema had the best game he's had in like 10 games. I think he was really good tonight. Like the majority of players played really well, and yet this felt like the result that was going to happen. And it's just disappointing. I still don't really doubt that we'll make the playoffs. We are on the cusp. There are teams right behind us. But the fact is that SKC and Minnesota have been very inconsistent as of late and just got really good performances the last match day. It's just disappointing. This season just has been kind of disappointing.
Mm. Well, I pulled up the standings here on the video feed for those who may be listening on the podcast version. But yeah, I mean there is a scenario here where 2 points over the next a point from each of the next 2 matches is still good enough to get that 9th spot, right? Or the 8th spot, right? Because of goal differential, which I think is the next tiebreaker on points if Kansas City or Minnesota were to win their final match. But obviously you want to get 3 points. 3 points, really.
Isn't the first tiebreaker in MLS wins?
It may be, and that's my question. I was assuming goal differential, but it could be wins, which could work then against Dallas. We'll have to watch that. But yeah, I mean, if they get a win, 45 points at this point is good enough for up to jump above Portland in 7th place. So you wouldn't have to do the play-in game, and then 48 points if you can get 2 wins in a row could potentially put you in contention with 4th place. But I think Houston would have the tiebreaker there, but I'm not sure. It looks like they probably would, goal differential and wins wise, but it would jump you up to 5th place, which would be a much better spot to be in, all things considered. So yeah, it's a tight Western Conference, and it usually is a tight Western Conference, but it's still a disappointing result at home. I take a little bit from the fact that the team went down a goal and then bounced back. Good, I like that. I like to see that from any team, right? Any game, if you go down a goal, you fight your way back, you get a point. Good for you. But you gifted that goal practically with just a sloppy start in the first 3 minutes of the match. Dallas is just Dallas for better or worse this season are a stingy defensive team, which is good for the playoff picture, but are struggling to put multiple goals in on a regular basis, which is not good for your hopes of it. Maybe at doing a deep run. But I guess the question is, guys, like, how do you diagnose this? How do you deal with this if you're Nico Estevez dealing with this challenge?
Not sure. I honestly don't know how you fix that, because he's been trying to get this team to play a certain way, and they are playing that certain way, and now it seems like they're their own worst enemy. Like they yes, they can kill the game. Yes, they can defend, but they just struggle finishing those chances when they do get them on goal. It's. I'm happy to see O'Brien, making that late push for his contract and whatnot, but it's at the expense of Ferreira playing more. He's not the main striker. I mean, O'Brien has been our main striker. He's the guy that the ball's getting lobbed into, who's trying to finish off those shots. Not Jesus. Jesus is often he's been treated more as a playmaker, and I think that's the other troublesome thing is when literally the health of your attack depends on Jesus scoring. The fact that he's trying to create as opposed to score, that's an issue that needs to be solved. Otherwise, this is what it is. This is a drawish team, and they're gonna draw their way as far as they can go.
Yeah. What's wild is I was looking at the standings from last year. Currently, we have 35 goals against. Let's say over the next 2 games, based off of our defensive record, we have 36 or 37 goals against. We had 37 goals against last year. We're pretty similar defensively as we were last year. We have also scored 12 less goals this season than we did last season. That's the deciding factor. And I think this game, like I said, is the epitome of the season, because what has happened for FC Dallas is that we are defensively sound except for 1 or 2 mistakes. Those 1 or 2 mistakes lead to goals. And then we just don't score enough to win games. An example would be the St. Louis game. In St. Louis, where we were, again, the better team for 10, 15 minutes. And then we have a stupid mistake with Tafari and Paz, and then we lose that game. It's just kind of a recurring theme. A lot of the goals that we conceded over the last 10 games, in those 1-1, 0-0 draws, the few goals that we've conceded, they've all been mistakes. We see those goals and we're like, okay, those are just small defensive blunders, but we can't score the goals to fix that. I mean, we talked about Jesus and Oberon switching, kind of Oberon taking Jesus's role, and that meaning that Jesus doesn't get in front of goal often. A player that we relied on a lot last season, Areola, has been incredibly disappointing. That miss early on in the second half was supremely bad in a game that those kinds of moments change the course of the game. It's to the point where I'm thinking maybe this is the opportunity to trade him to his hometown San Diego this offseason. It's just there's injuries, but coming back from it, he's been so inconsistent when it comes to his output in goals and assists. Both Areola and Jesus are what we relied on last year. And Jesus has scored a couple less goals, and Areola has scored a lot less goals.
Yeah.
That's where we are now. No one else has been able to replicate their performance last year.
That's helpful analysis, because I thought, we've been generally feeling that the defense has been better this year. Now, granted, what has been different too about this year, we had a huge injury glut through the middle of the summer, early summer. that surely you take that away, guys healthy, you're going to score some more goals. You're going to have some more competitive games in that run. I mean, they had to really dig deep into some of those matches. So yeah, you take that. That's sometimes how soccer works out and how a season unfolds for teams of in any league in the world. You just sometimes injuries don't go your way. But in a match at home, when you get so many good chances, and not just the Areola miss, but Jesus missing what should have been just a sitter for him, and he skies it. And I know it's tough. I'm not a professional soccer player. I probably would scuff it as well. But when you need your designated player to step up, he's not able to find that go-ahead goal. It's tough, And I think what Jose and I have talked about, Ishmael, too, before, is that if FC Dallas has this Achilles heel, it is that teams know that if they just set up shop, if they put the low block in, Dallas is going to struggle to find a way to score, as many teams would be, but especially FC Dallas. And so San Jose, Lucci was able to say, hey, I'm going to see this point out. And he was able to see the point out, a big away point for Lucci. But certainly not a referendum either on Lucci's style of play versus Nico at this point. It was an interesting match, but it certainly didn't. I don't know that you saw an edge either way. Jose?
So I think the problem that bothers everyone, we understand that the attack is struggling, but we have a good defense. We just don't have a great defense, and if we had a great defense, if they weren't giving up those mistake goals, we'd probably be in a much better shape, regardless of what the attack is doing. And I think that's the problem, is that for a team that relies on its defense, that basically has designed their play around having a really good defense, the fact that the defense keeps conceding mistake goals every game, they're usually good for at least one, bad opportunity given away, one bad play that leads to an excellent attempt from another team. Pretty much every game you can expect one, and the fact that it happened so early in this match, it's just killer. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that every game. Yes, the team has only lost one match in the last 10, but they've also only won one match in the last 10, and that's par for course for this team. We talked about it last week. I said, this team should get 6 points out of the next two matches, San Jose, Colorado, but it would be very FC Dallas to go out there and only get 4 points out of it when 6 are there to be had. And that's what we're staring at. And frankly, we're staring at getting 4 points out of this homestand, but the reality is we all can sense that 2 is very much a possibility right now. Even though we all know Colorado is terrible and we know it's going to be a home match, none of us can confidently say
right.
It's a guaranteed 3. And I think for a team that prides itself of having Fortress Frisco, I think that's the hardest thing to swallow, is the fact that you're having to settle for draws at home. Even when we had bad teams, that wasn't a thing. You could still play those games with knowing that your team is going to go out for the 3 points.
Yeah. What's wild? One of the things I was thinking about when Jose said that you're good for conceding like one goal every game, like almost every single game.
Yes.
For a great defensive team, we are currently tied for third last in the league in clean sheets, with 7 clean sheets. Every other team around us with that number has conceded 50 goals, like the majority of them. What's it called? Atlanta, who's conceded 51 goals, has one more clean sheet than us. That's extremely bad. We've only been, even in the wins that we've had, we still concede goals. We've talked a lot of. There's been a lot of comeback games where we come back and win 2-1. But it's just small mistakes. Again, this goal was a mistake. Like this goal that we conceded was a mistake. One that I think would have been able to have been prevented if they were a little bit sharper in the beginning. I think both Jafari and Farfan were really poor at tracking the ball, just going across the 6 yard box. Um, it's just those small things, and when you can't, I think that's the reason why a player like Tafari, who's been having a really good season, is not going to be defender of the year. It's just not, and it's just small, tiny mistakes. That's why Potts is not going to be goalkeeper of the year, because it's just small mistakes that continue to happen, and I don't think you can blame those on injuries. Like a lot of them happened when we had injuries. One of our two games that we lost when the other team scored 3 goals was against Austin when we had injuries. I don't think we can attribute it to that because currently the majority of players are healthy, except for Leggett and Jovan Jesus, and we are still doing these small mistakes.
Yeah.
And again, that's the reason why we are not confident for Colorado. I think it's very much plausible that we scored 2 goals against Colorado, but who's to say we don't concede one,
Right.
or we only score one? It's the small things, and those small things might cost us a playoff spot. It was when Matt Doyle's article that came out today. It said that getting 3 points will get us the playoffs. Getting 2 might not, and that is a game of inches, and it's just the mistake that are costing us those inches.
You know what's also frustrating is that this team doesn't seem to be playing to make the playoffs. They're playing to avoid making the playoffs. That's basically like if you said, "Hey, whatever you do, make sure that you at least get in and get in, into that knockout game." And it just seems like, despite everything being an FC Dallas favorite, it seems like they're playing for that. They're playing simply to not avoid the playoffs. So while we're all over here lamenting this and that, it's just part of me thinks that the team seems to be satisfied with these draws. And here's the other thing with allowing the goals: it's when you allow those goals. Those goals seem to always happen, at either the start of a half or the end of a half, and it just speaks to lapse in concentration. And if you're an opponent, that's how you get your team to never quit fighting. No, they're saying, "Hey, okay, sure, maybe we're down a goal or maybe it's still tied, but FC Dallas is gonna fumble the ball and give it to you. They're gonna make a mistake. That mistake is coming. Keep pushing, keep pushing." And this is how, even if FC Dallas is in the lead, you're not gonna break down a team by suffocating, because they're gonna say, "Hey, FC Dallas is good for that mistake. It's coming. Just keep playing hard, and they'll cough it up." And that's something that helps your opponents, knowing that your defense is good but has flaws. And I don't know how you can fix that.
It's all right. Well, let me pull up the standings again. So, and as we talk about what's going to happen, by the way, I did include Austin on this screenshot just because Austin has been eliminated. So anyway, just any Austin fans watching, but Kansas City and Minnesota play each other in a week from Saturday. So the scenario there is at least one team is going to have 44 points. One team is going to, or they'll both have 42, right? Or so that's your scenario. So Dallas needs to at least be more than 42, but ideally you want to be above 44 to leave no question at all. And that's a fascinating stat right there. So you'd want 4 points. 3 points would be fine over these last two games, but 4 points, of course, anything would be better. But 2 points, you could be in, but you might not be in, depending on how things shake out. So that's a little nugget. Now, of course, you could also argue from a game management perspective that if you're going into the playoffs and you had to absolutely choose, and you weren't going to be in the middle of the pack, would you prefer to face off against St. Louis City, who, is a good team, but is not maybe the dominant team that some people might think, being first in the West? Or would you play an informed LAFC who, certainly haven't been playing super well, but all of a sudden, are going to turn it on? I of course you have to win the play-in game, but as a coach, I'd rather take my chances against St. Louis City than, say, LAFC, just on a talent level. But I don't think that Nico is game planning that, right? I mean, I don't think Nico he would have preferred the win on Saturday. So I don't think this is some kind of like cheat code gaming the system to play St. Louis. I think Dallas is where they are because that's who they are as a team at this point in the season.
Well, my answer is that if we're being honest, I would rather play LAFC because I know LAFC is going to come after Dallas and supposed to sit back, and Dallas needs teams to come after them to get those counterattacks going. And in all honesty, if I got to choose between them and St. Louis, I would rather play against LAFC. I think it's a team that you can frustrate, that you can counter against, and who, frankly, won't be satisfied to, if they're up 1-0, they won't be satisfied to bunker. That's not their style. So I would rather FC Dallas play LAFC.
Even though Dallas played pretty well against St. Louis,
even though they played really well against St. Louis, in St. Louis, it's the style of play. I'd rather play LAFC than St. Louis. That's just my opinion.
Okay.
I'm just saying St. Louis would be more than happy to bunker and play, route one ball all day. So I'm saying matchup wise, I personally would rather play LAFC.
Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, Ishmael, before you jump in, like Dallas played pretty well against LAFC this year. I mean, I was at the game here in Los Angeles, and it was a bit unlucky that Dallas didn't at least come away with a point. Ishmael, go ahead.
I'd rather play St. Louis because I don't want to play in that stadium. I don't want to play in LAFC stadium. It's a lot harder to play in that stadium than it is to play in St. Louis. Just by what I'm saying.
Valid point.
I really am not thinking about this. We need to beat Colorado, and if we beat Colorado, we would play Seattle, and I would very much prefer Seattle over both of those teams.
Okay.
Like Seattle is extremely inconsistent this year and does not have the home record that they've had in the past. I would very much prefer Seattle. If we're able to get if we're able to beat LA Galaxy, it's in LA, but it's also the Galaxy. We could end up as high as 6th or 5th place. I would very much prefer to play Houston. That would be incredible. That would be like the best game to have. I just want us to win these last two games. We really need to win these two games. It's wild that we don't think the Colorado game is a guaranteed win. It's to the point where I'm like, even if we could make the playoffs, this isn't like this making like supposed matches for the playoffs just feels like we don't belong because of the way that we've been playing. Because of the fact that we think we might not be Colorado. I don't think we deserve to play St. Louis, LAFC, Seattle, Houston.
Yeah.
That's so disappointing that it's to that point now.
Hmm.
I would also like to add that it also feels like this team is still transitioning. Like they still haven't found their best formation. I mean, look at how they lined up. With Pax and uh, Ilara Mendy. As the two mids and no true six. I mean, it just seems like this team still hasn't decided what their best formation is, and this is not something you should be doing this late into the season.
Yeah, and another thing is these next two games, Quignon has to be playing instead of Paxton. There needs to be that defensive structure um, where it limits the chances. We look a lot better as a defensive team with Quignon on the field than we do with Paxton on the field. Um,
True.
Against Colorado, who are going to be playing for their jobs, who have quick and fast attackers like Cabral, like Rubio, like Ronan. We need to be stout defensively. I understand what we're going for the 4-4-2. It's a lot more free flowing, and I think that fixes a lot of the offensive struggles that we've had in the past. Like the one good thing I can say from the San Jose game is that besides the scoring, attacking wise, we were very good. It was very well structured, and we had the opportunities to win this game 3-1, 4-1. Like it fixed a lot of the offensive problems, and I understand that, but it we cannot concede against Colorado.
Yeah.
Especially, we also cannot concede against Colorado before we score. That's a definite thing.
Yeah. I mean, Colorado has nothing to lose, and Colorado can play a spoiler, and Los Angeles Galaxy have the benefit of playing a spoiler over these next 2 weeks for FC Dallas. So, and these guys are playing for contracts. Their coaches playing for a possibility of a next season. So it is such a it's just a tough situation for Dallas. You would on paper you say, oh, I would love to play the teams that are not qualified for the playoffs at the end of the season, but they're open to causing chaos. So it's going to be a really fascinating couple of weeks. But of course, if FC Dallas is the team they believe they are, they should take care of business. I mean, 3 points at home against Colorado should be enough to move forward without a doubt. In the LA Galaxy game, even a point there would be a nice thing, or 3 points. But you go out and you lose these next two games, you have a lot of questions to ask of Nico and of this roster.
Yeah. What's interesting is I definitely think Nico's job, no matter what happens in the next two games, I think Nico's job is safe for next year. I think they're going to give him 2024, which isn't disappointing per se. One of the things, though, that I will be looking at, especially as the season ends, is what are the contract decisions that are made. Because at the end of the day, I could see a scenario where players like Martinez come back, where players like a lot of the players. I wouldn't characterize any of the players as having like terrible seasons this year. The majority of them that have their contracts ending, except for Jimmy because Jimmy hasn't played. The majority of the players, Martinez, Facu, Obrion, there's a couple of others. They've had solid seasons, but the way this season has played and how stalled and dogmatic this team has played, like there needs to be shifts. There needs to be changes. There needs to be at least 2, if not 3, new players in the starting lineup next year.
True.
And I see a possibility where it's not even one player that changes, and that would be very disappointing going into 2024.
Well, this is good stuff. I mean, if you ask me right now, like I was thinking about it today, I feel like this game on Saturday is set up for a draw. I feel like Dallas is just, and that just says a lot, about just the frustration of that it was on Saturday night. Like seeing the team play well, but still just that we can't get that second goal, and a second goal was all that would have been needed to kind of log down those 3 points. So but I'm ready to be proven wrong. I'm ready to be shown that this team is going to unlock whatever that next gear is that they need to at this point in the season. They're just too talented not to. But this is where we are as FC Dallas fans, and the numbers, kind of don't lie at this point. So. The good thing is that they'll have a makeup game. They have this Los Angeles Galaxy game, so even if they stink it out on Saturday, they can go out and try to save their season kind of the following weekend. But I hope that they don't leave it to that, and they give themselves some ability to rotate guys, rest guys before the LA Galaxy game. I don't know.
But because of the way things are, because they got a whole week between each match, frankly, there shouldn't be no rotation. You should be, if the lineup you rolled out against San Jose, which played really well in the second half, if that's what you want to go with, roll it out again. Get everybody on the same page. Cut down those mistakes, and you got to build on something. So I want to see them roll out a similar formation. I mean, get a win against Colorado, and then take that same formation and start it against LAG. Even if you have to settle for a point there, go for the W, go for the 3. You got to build something going into the playoffs, because while it's probably going to take a team PKs to eliminate FC Dallas from the postseason, they're not exactly a great PK team to begin with. So,
I mean, we don't have the numbers to prove that.
I'm just saying,
Unfortunately, we don't. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm just saying, it's not like FC Dallas is an elite PK team. So, still, you got a chance to build on something. Get the W against Colorado. Give yourself a chance to go into a LAG with a chance to climb up the standings instead of fighting for the 8th or 9th spot.
I think the reason why the Colorado game is so important, besides those 3 points, is that if we're working under the assumption that we get the wild card game, hopefully, if we are able to win both games, we don't have to play the wild card game. But working under the assumption that we play as boringly, if for lack of a better term, as we have, and we play the wild card game. The wild card game will be either Wednesday or Thursday the week after. That means that there won't be a lot of break after the LA Galaxy game. If the LA Galaxy game is the game that we have to put 110%, because that's what the playoffs rely on, it makes it that much harder for the Wednesday and the Thursday, or the Thursday game. So we have to make our lives just slightly easier by winning, and then be annoying against LA Galaxy, and then try to get 3 points, or maybe just 1 point. But if we put all our eggs into the basket of the LA Galaxy game, it makes the wildcard game so much harder, because the team will put 110% into that game, and then the wildcard game becomes a risk.
Well, good stuff, and I know that the playoff format is different this year, so we'll touch upon that. We still have 2 more weeks before we really dive into that. So, Ishmael, Jose, appreciate your reflections tonight, your commentary. A couple of quick things to get to before we close out the show for the evening. Of course, good news, really amazing news, because we watched this kid come out of nowhere, but Bernard Kumungo getting a call up to the Olympic team domestic training camp for the U.S., Just proud of this guy, and he, of course, was able to kind of get back on the field this past weekend late after suffering an injury and being out for a few weeks. We certainly need him to get healthy, but what a story that just points to FC Dallas's academy and development system. And then building off of that, of course, North Texas announced on the 5th of October some contract decisions about players. Six guys released, 2 other out of contract or so. Ultimately deciding that they exercised options on Tyshawn Rose and Thomas Pondeka. Tyshawn, of course, went down with the season-ending injury at left back. He's a very interesting talent there. And Pondeka is another guy in the Kamungo kind of category of a walk-on, kind of a trialist. And he really came on strong over the second half of the season. Really interesting story. A guy coming from futsal. Gets another year to see how he can develop with North Texas. It leaves about 9 players total on the roster for North Texas. But the big story is that they declined the contract options on Theo Ferreira, Henry Santos, Michael Weber, Thabo Nair, and Pablo Torre. Manuel Saicedo and Yasir Perlaza are expired loans. Alejandro Araneda and Andrea Costa are out of contract. But I left one name out of that because that's where I wanted to end. Hope Aveyevu. Not his contract option was not picked up. And if there's a player that has stood out over these past couple of seasons, it has been Hope for his attacking prowess on the wing as a striker. Ishmael, I'd love your opinion. One, this still can mean that Hope gets an invite to the FC Dallas senior camp and at least gets a chance to sort of earn a senior roster spot, maybe get loaned somewhere. Or is this like a Ronaldo Damas kind of thing where, a guy has hit his ceiling with North Texas, the team doesn't have the space for him, and he needs to go elsewhere to, grow as a player. What did you think about this decision, Ishmael?
Well, I think it's been shown by FC Dallas that to be promoted from North Texas to FC Dallas, you need to light up the league, right? And Hope has been consistently good, but he's never lit up the league to the level that the players like Hepi or Kamungo have, or even Mulatto. Mulatto did really well last season. Hope has never been to that level. I don't doubt that he's going to be invited to camp. I think Hope, Diego Garcia, and Carl Sante will all be in FC Dallas camp next year, right? Because Carl Sante has been performing for Haiti for every single international break, and Diego Garcia just got called up to the youth national team and started before their game got suspended for weather. So I think those 3 players will be invited to camp. I think that'll be Hope's last opportunity. It's slightly disappointing that he never stood out enough, but it's not as disappointing as, like you mentioned, like Ronaldo Dambus never coming or Arturo Rodriguez never signing for us. Those 2 players were players that lit up the league a lot more than Hope did, and were not signed to a first-team contract. So if they aren't even the baseline, I think it's kind of understandable why after 3 years Hope goes. I think that's the same reason why Andre Costa was never signed. He was always on that cusp, but again, never lit up the league enough to prove that he deserved a first-team contract. So it's disappointing, but it's kind of understandable.
Yeah, actually, going through the players that they kept and they released, I want to point out Pondeka, who was played on the wings by Cano, and then once Glad took over, once the managerial change took place, Pondeka was moved into the 8th spot very similar to what Velasco went through, where he was struggling on the wings, and they moved him inside, and all of a sudden Velasco's playing great. Well, that's what happened with Pondeka, who, by the way, not only did he excel in the middle, but he fixed North Texas' biggest issue that they've had all season, which is the lack of a playmaker. You know, since they lost Ferry, they just they have had no creative midfielders. Ursua is solid, but he's more like a box to box. And he's young, so he's still learning. And Saint is your six, but they did not have a guy that could help unlock the defenses. And Pondeka started showing that once they moved him to the middle. Presto change, all of a sudden that disappears, and that comes down to familiarity. I guess I'm told that Pondeka has played for the current North Texas manager in the past, so there's some familiarity there. But I'm looking at the players that they kept, and they pretty much kept players that are going to probably be your starters next year. You're talking about uh, as far as the midfield, you got Saint, you got Pondeka, you got Ursua. There's your three starting midfielders, and then backing them it's going to be Garcia, and you're going to have Lacey backing them up. Then up front, if Hope's not coming back, you're going to have the new Argentinian Taboada coming back. You're going to have healthy, hopefully, the kid that we lost at the beginning of the year,
Tariq Scott. Yeah.
Tariq Scott. You're going to get him back. And then on the defense, Rose started pretty much every match at left back. So why wouldn't you bring him back? And then, of course, you signed Molina at the end of the year, and he started at right back at the end of the year. And then, of course, your center backs is going to be, Norris and I forget the Croatian kid.
Korka. Yeah.
I don't think Korka's coming back.
Though, yeah, we don't know.
But even if he doesn't come back, my point is they'll probably draft a center back, and whoever they draft is going to get slotted in. So the holes in the starting lineup, if you took the returning players, are going to be filled by players from FC Dallas that are loaned down. So all I'm saying is this year they really struck out on their foreign contingent of players that they brought in on loan or that they signed, and that really hurt this team big time. And I'm just saying, if you look at who they kept, they've put themselves in a position where they can simply not worry about that. Your likely starters at most positions are either already on the roster or will be provided by FC Dallas. So it frees you up to take some gambles and bring in players and not have to worry about whether they're going to be better than this year's crop or not.
Think about the players that they did end up signing in the latter half of the season. Orzua was signed in the latter half of the season. Molina was signed. Lacey was signed. I think the team is
Pepe. Yeah, Diego Pepe. Interesting.
I think the team is starting to realize that although there can be one or two international signings, there is enough stock in both the college players that they draft. Hopefully more stay this year than just Andali stay this year. And the academy players. There's enough there where there's a lot less risk and a lot higher ceiling.
And familiarity too, and you don't have to worry about them not having trouble acclimating to their new locale, to a new country. It eliminates a lot of issues. So I agree. And like I said, it frees you up to gamble on some players, and maybe next year's team will have way more academy products than in the past.
Yeah.
That's a good way to go. I'm all for it.
Yeah, just for example, currently one of the top assist players in college right now is Kevin Bonilla, FC Dallas Academy right back. There's been multiple center backs that have played for North Texas and the Academy that have been starting every single game, including Grady Easton. I think Will Baker is also starting a lot. Slate Starnes is starting a lot. Um, there's a lot for this team to grab that of the resources they've created, the players that they've nurtured in the college system and currently in the academy system. I don't think they're not. I don't think they're going to stop signing international players. There probably is going to be 1 to 3 players signed, but this last year we had like almost half a dozen, if not more, and every single one of them, at least for this season, struck out. Like we brought back Taboada, but he didn't do anything this season. So I think they're going to again. They might go back to the same plan, which would be slightly disappointing. But based off of the signings that they made in the latter half of the season, I think they're going to restrict the amount of international signings they make.
Yeah, and the thing on Taboada though, he's the new Hope Aveyevu, basically. He signed a 3-year deal. They're gambling that this kid will pan out in a couple of years. So I agree he didn't really do much, but he's more of a long-term project. Um, and yeah, I think I like from the signings I've seen and who they let go. Besides the Hope, I do like the direction that they're going with for next year. They finished strong. They finished with something to build in, and a lot of the players that are signed for next year were involved in those late games. So plenty to build on. I think the managerial position will stay as is. I think the interim title will be lost, and
Yeah.
I think this was basically a transition period where the upper management was trying to figure out what they were going to do with North Texas, and I think they finally figured out that, hey, great place to play. A lot of the younger guys that need a lot more seasoning.
Well, good, and I'll be working some angles here to try to see if I can have another conversation with interim head coach John Gall, and of course maybe with any other FC Dallas folks to figure out what is the future for North Texas. So stay tuned to afterburn.soccer for some of those articles and things to come. I think it's about time to wrap this conversation up this evening. Appreciate you, Jose. Appreciate you, Ishmael.
Thank you for having me on, as usual.
Yeah, big game this Saturday as a rescheduled match. And all eyes will be on in Frisco to see how FC Dallas does against the Rapids. Of course, stay tuned, everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you find podcasts. Thank you, Ishmael. Thank you, Jose. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Night, y'all.
Good night.